excited about our next guest, Reza Sarrafieh. Did I get it right?
That was a good job, bro. That was a great job.
The Indians and Persians, man. We can work it out. He's the national director of Roc Nation. Been a career industry veteran. Really excited about talking about your career and your experiences. And I'm sure Partha is too. Partha is a hip hop head. A little bit younger than us, but
stoked to be. How old are you, Partha?
I'm 27, man.
Oh yeah, you're definitely a little bit younger.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm excited to get into this with you, man. You've got an exciting story, and I'm really looking forward to digging in.
Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to it too. So let's talk.
Before we start, though, we got to ask you a question. You know, Partha's in LA. You're in LA. Where did the Persians get all this money out there, man? Why are you guys so wealthy out there?
You should understand without going too deep into Persian history for you.
Yeah.
The people that were able to leave Iran during the revolution were the middle class and upper middle class. The only people that didn't leave were the extremely wealthy clerics and clergy that owned land, and the extremely poor that couldn't leave, that were leading the revolution. Kind of similar to what's happening in the United States right now. It was the rich leading the poor into their own doom.
Yeah.
So all the people that were intelligent, the entire brain drain happened, and all the intelligent, wealthy people moved to Los Angeles, pretty much. I'm not even going to say America, Los Angeles, into what we call Tehrangeles, which is between where me and Partha live, right in the middle in Westwood. And, the last mayor of Beverly Hills was Persian. And there's actually a separation of Persians here in LA too that people don't realize. There's the Jewish Persians and the Muslim Persians,
yes,
which I don't really associate with either because I'm not a very big religious person. But people don't even realize that the largest population of Jews outside of Israel before 1980 was in Iran. They all came here to America and LA. So, and a lot of them were actually Armenians, which are living up by where Partha's at too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Armenians too.
I've got a Jewish Persian basketball group that actually playing sometimes over in Westwood.
Yeah, the Muslim ones live further south in Orange County and Palos Verdes, and all the West LA ones are pretty much Jewish usually.
So your story is unique, right? Your family immigrated over here. Did you guys come to California first? Is that your
first city we came to was Torrance, California? Yeah, it's a chain reaction. We had family out here already, so we just followed in their footsteps.
Nice. And so as a first generation American getting into the music industry, what kind of was your initial inspiration? Because obviously you have to have a love or a passion for this thing to be in it as long as you've been. Like, can you highlight, or do you know when
the way you presented that is very cliche, right? It's supposed to be that, but my story is very atypical. I was actually a poli-sci major. I didn't even know my job that I have existed. I didn't know that people got paid to go out and take people out to party and have fun with them and convince them to do what they want to do. I mean, I thought only, lobbyists and pharmaceutical reps did that, but essentially that's what my job is. I lucked into it. I had no intentions. I was a poli-sci major. I was planning on graduating and then going to law school. It just happened to be a culmination of events that occurred. I was waiting on tables. I waited on a guy. He offered me an opportunity that sounded interesting. And at the time when I weighed my options, I was 22 years old, going on 23. I messed around. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this podcast, but I fucked around and wasted the first 2 years after high school going down to San Diego and ruining my educational career and putting a whole bunch of bad grades on my report card. So when he approached me, I had just about finished El Camino and I was about to matriculate to UCLA. I'd already done the paperwork and been accepted as my transfer. And he offered me a job. And the way he presented it to me was, how much do you make here? And we had known each other over the passing of maybe 15, 20 minutes of conversation because he had sat on my table once before and this is the second time. And I said, I make $60,000 a year part-time. This is in 2003, and which I did. And 20 hours a week, I would make about $50,000, $60,000 a year. So he said, okay, well, I'll give you 65 plus overtime to be my assistant. I'm like, well, shit, what do you do? So he's like, come by and check it out. I work at a record label. I do music. And, I was in a high-end restaurant by the name of Fleming's, which is a steakhouse. So we used to get a lot of side offers and things like that when we made relationships with the business owners. But this was a little different. So I went up there and I hung out for like a day and I saw it was really not hard. It was just a bunch of people just hanging out. There was some work being done, but it was mostly just goofing off. This would look like. Anyway, And that was it. And, then he asked me if I liked the job, and I said, sure, I could do it. And is there a place to grow? He said, absolutely. All my last assistants are executives now. And then when I weighed my options and I looked at it, and I had 2 more years of undergrad and 3 years of postgrad, and I'm 23 going on 24, I'm thinking I'm not going to start my life until 30 to start generating income. I can't do that. That's, that's scary. And not as scary as telling your Persian parents that you're going to drop out of your 4-year amazing school and go work for a black man to do hip hop music. But that's what I did. Yes. So that was the beginning of it. And then there was 14-hour days, and that I did that for about a year and a half, 14-hour days, 6 a.m. in the office. Sometimes I would sleep in the office because we'd have to be out to Hollywood till about 2 or 3 in the morning working. Driving back down to where I lived was a pain in the ass. So I would actually sleep in my boss's office. We kept, a few of us did this, the assistants, we kept an iron in there, toothbrush. Back in the day when things weren't as mobile, BlackBerrys were just starting to come out. I had to be at that landline at 6:30 to start the conference call for everybody in the morning. So it was just easier to do that. And then after a year, they moved me out to Cleveland, which is when I made your acquaintance, 2006, which was I got to be honest, it was a culture shock. I mean, I'd only grown up here in LA and San Diego, and then to go from LA and San Diego to where there is segregation and some racism, but it's not blatant. It's not Midwest America blatant, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I have to understand it's different cultures. And I showed up to Cleveland, and it's like I'm the only guy in my shade anywhere I go, but nevertheless, my $5 buys 2 drinks, not. So it was really a balancing culture shock kind of thing. And 10 months later, the labels were doing so well in 2007 that they actually moved me back. And, one of the things that worked for me out there was that I came to the music business without being a music head or a music business type of guy. Yeah. A lot of people that get into the music business, they kind of lose sight of the work and get lost in the glory. Yeah. And I came from a corporate type of mentality before this because of my college education and my interning at different places and whatnot outside of waiting on tables. I just succeeded by just doing my job, just literally just doing my job, what I was supposed to do and following through. And I achieved things in the Ohio Valley that previous reps hadn't been able to do and broke some acts out there. So they brought me back to LA. We split Interscope and Geffen apart, and they had me and another gentleman running the Interscope side and someone else was running the Geffen side. So nice. It was interesting to become the boss of the people that were your peers and your boss's employees not too long ago.
Yeah, and take us into that, right? Because you said you rose by doing the work. You did some good networking too, but you did the work and you worked consistently. And I think that's important for people to recognize that even in industries where there's a lot of flash, the people who do the work rise to the top. And I think when you went over to Interscope, you started collecting accolades. First, you were the youngest national director. You got placed on Billboard's 30 under 30. Take us into that, where you went from the guy working.
Did you actually look at that 30 under 30? Have you seen the article? This is the craziest thing about that article.
I remember when it happened. You sent it. Right.
You can find it on Google Books, and it's funny because people ask me for a bio, and the easiest way to send them a bio is to actually send them the blurb still from there. Yeah. And 4 years ago, I was looking at it, and I noticed the way they did the 30 under 30 is there would be one guy highlighted on the page and like 4 or 5 other guys on that page, and they would caricaturize the one guy. On my page, I was the highlighted, caricaturized guy. And in the bottom right, there's a tiny little blurb about this guy named Mark Zuckerberg on the same page as me.
Oh, wow.
To think about the different trajectories since then, I'm a little envious, to be honest. But
you've done pretty well, too.
I've done all right. Yeah, I can sleep better at night. That's the difference between me and him. So to your point, especially in an industry like this, your hard work stands out more because it stands out more. In an industry like banking, MBA, those people have been trained from young life to be able to overachieve and overachieve and overachieve. In our business, there is no minimum requirement prerequisites to join the business except knowing someone that wants to bring you along and likes you. That's literally it. This is, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast. I've been really listening to this Smartless podcast with Jason Bateman and Will Arnett and these guys. And Jason Bateman made the best comment about our business, and it's kind of what led me to leave Interscope, is that our business is not a meritocracy. Our business is the furthest thing you can have from a meritocracy where your hard work will equal to harder and higher gaining and better standing. It could actually work against you. I mean, but you have to work smart in the industry and work towards the right goal. I was lucky enough that my rise wasn't just because of my hard work. I came in under a guy named Garnett March, who actually hired me out of the restaurant, and all praise to him for showing me this world and giving me these opportunities. He didn't just bring me on as a warm body. That man literally threw me in head first into what he did every single day. I would listen on mute on his calls. I would talk to people on his behalf. I would follow up on things for him. In our industry, a lot of people don't realize that once you get to the level of SVP or president, you're not actually doing the work a lot of times anymore. The people that are actually doing the work are your assistants. And if they're presidential assistants, these guys are getting paid higher than most other employees at the company anyway. Jimmy Iovine's assistants were in the six figures. I mean, that's easy money because they have to be. Those guys are on call 24 hours a day, all the time, and their job is very vital. So they're essentially mini Jimmys, or all these guys are that way. So he afforded me the ability to build relationships on his name and his back, which means a lot in this business. In our business, it's a very closed, small circle. It's not looking for new friends. They're not looking for new people. So to build these relationships that I had to build, it took a lot of help from the people around me and some, doors being open for me. And it hurt me and it helped me at the same time that I wasn't Black too, because this was really my first introduction into Black urban culture, because I was this violin playing, 3-language speaking scholar that came from England to America. And then in 91, I wasn't even allowed to listen to rap when I came to America, because all my parents knew about rap music is it was gangsters and violence. And I mean, when I first got my first raps cassette, it was the Doggy Style album, and I had to hide it from my parents for months. That's how I grew up. So it's different, and the difference is that these guys are culturally so different than the area I grew up in, which is a bubble. And I had to adapt to such a different culture, not even just Black culture, just music culture and urban and entertainment culture, right? And it was interesting, and it took a lot of help and it took a lot of patience, because it's hard when you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed to not understand why people don't have the same enthusiasm and energy as you, when you don't know the politics behind where they are, what they want, and where their head wants to be. So it was hard. But being a boss to the people that were my peers or used to be my superiors was also interesting. And I never really tried to take the role of listen to me because I'm better than you. I know a few people in our industry that are younger executives that act that way, and it really goes the wrong way. It leads to a lot of people not wanting to follow you. It leads to you being a boss, but not a leader. I wanted to be a leader, but even then it's still kind of hard, because as a 40-year-old, how do you look at this guy that's 27 and say, I respect what you have to say, when I watched you get introduced to this business a year ago and I've been doing it for 10 years? It's hard.
Yeah.
So, lucky for me, we had some great product, some great oversight, great leadership. And then 1 year later, the whole experiment came down because 2008 happened. And then 2008, everything went to shit. So we eventually ended up letting go a lot of our staff. I mean, I had some great people working for me. One of my regionals, Arnold Taylor, is now the baby's manager and running a label called SCMG. Another one is over at Capitol Records as a SVP. Another one is over at Interscope, being great too. So it was a great staff, but because of the economy, we had to cut it down. And I moved to Chicago to be a national director out of the Chicago region, because I was the only single guy at the time that was unattached and could get up and go. Yeah. So I moved to Chicago in 2008. I literally got my apartment the night Obama got elected, when they had a parade down Michigan Avenue. And that was probably a great 4 years of my life. Chicago was everything on the radio and record side, a lot of people don't realize, almost every executive and every head of divisions has been through the Midwest. The Midwest is like the proving ground of all our businesses, because there's no flash and show. You've got to actually just do work in the Midwest.
Yeah.
In other parts of the country, you can do a lot of flash and show and get away and fudge the numbers because of the sheer population. Can't do that in the Midwest. So it's a little harder.
Reza, you've dropped so many just amazing tidbits. I wanna dig into a little bit about your perspective coming from your passion and early interest for political science. You mentioned it about entertainment not being exactly meritocracy. Do you think your understanding of how our political system works at an early age helped you navigate that scene? And do you think that people who want to get into the industry should be looking at different topics of study that will help them better understand the dynamics of it?
So I'm glad you touched on that. It's a little left of what you said. I don't believe politics is the most important thing in our business. I think in all businesses, especially in America, where it's a capitalist society and there's open doors, I think the ability to use your confidence and your mouth are more important than anything else, and the ability to relate to people. That's essentially what's helped me. And you know, at first, like I said, it was a hindrance that I wasn't Black. But after a while, I figured out how to make it a positive on both sides. I mean, to put it bluntly, Black people trusted me because I wasn't white, and white people felt comfortable with me because I wasn't Black. But I was in the middle of both those worlds and could navigate in between both. And so that's actually what helped me in Ohio. To be honest, we won't mention a couple of programmers' names, but the word on the street was that they were biased against hip hop reps, urban reps, because it's a polite way of saying against Black people, essentially. You know, they didn't respect Black people. They didn't listen to Black people. And these are white guys running Black radio stations with Black product, with Black employees, but they just didn't show the same respect. And knowing this, despite my personal ethics and beliefs, I had a job to do. I dressed in a suit instead of looking like a hip hop guy and showed up to the guy like a business meeting, and I earned his respect. I knew how to navigate in different rooms. That one of the biggest problems in the entertainment business is people don't believe they should adapt or navigate in different rooms. They insist on the room adapting to them. And you have to know how to, and that I think came from waiting on tables. Like waiting on tables really taught me how to associate and relate to people and maximize the relationship in a short amount of time.
I think it's interesting that you came from such a humble perspective with it too, because everything that you're saying, you had no real ego or no real sense of how you should be perceived when you're walking into these rooms. But I think what stands out is that every single challenge that was in your path, you didn't address it with any sense of entitlement to the end product. Instead, you went in with an open mind to figure out the problem.
You know, entitlement, I think, is the right word. You use it. It's like, I noticed a lot of people were upset at me because they felt almost entitled to the position that I had earned as Garnett's assistant. And then other people were upset at me because they felt entitled to the position I earned as the national. But, you know, I never felt any of these things were entitled to me. I just didn't know how to get them, and I wanted to work hard to get them. And I think not coming from the musical background, again, helped me because I understood the concept of start from the bottom and work your way up.
And I think the other thing that's always stood out to me about you is you don't get caught up in any of that, right? It's like no matter what people are saying, you know what people are saying, and you know these issues, but you have a kind of a laser focus of this is my job, this is what I have to do. And I think a lot of us, especially in corporate environments and in business, it's very important to not get caught up in that stuff, especially when you have a job to do, because you have more peace that way.
Yeah, bro, you said it. So 2017, I quit Interscope for that reason. Not to cut you off, I'm sorry. I quit Interscope because of that reason. Because you know, this job makes it very toxic, especially my very niche field. I'm supposed to find ways to permeate into people's lives and make my product permeate into your life, right? It becomes tedious. It's like being married to every single radio programmer I deal with. I have to answer their phone calls at 2 a.m. It's not that I have to. It's like I actually am friends with these people. And I feel the obligation to my friends to talk to them, because my job is to actually be friends with these people. It's not just to get them to play the music. Over time, you become friends. It's shared experiences create friends, and these are my friends. But it's hard to explain to my wife why I'm friends with a pretty 30-year-old in Miami, and she has to call me at 2 a.m. about an artist, and it can't wait till 6 the next day. Yeah. It might be because the artist is supposed to be there, but that's a lot to try and tell my wife before I have to answer the phone at 2 a.m., which... In my older age, I've managed to delegate and be smarter about the way I organize my life so people understand the limitations and boundaries. But I left Interscope in 2017 because it wasn't a meritocracy. It was becoming very toxic. I was starting to look at people as a commodity as opposed to humans, and I didn't, you know, value real relationships anymore for a while. And I also had 2 kids at home, 2 girls that I didn't want to raise with a toxic parent that was coming home upset and angry because he has 5,000 relationships going on at one time, and he can't turn his phone off. So I quit. And I actually was in a great situation, and I quit with a very strong hand and walked out with quite a bit of money. And my whole intent was to leave the music business behind and do anything else that wasn't the music business, literally like real estate, cars, whatever. So long story short, they gave me my vacation pay, which was a nice chunk, and my bucket list was to always play Pebble Beach up in San Francisco. So I go up there, and a good friend of mine who works at Empire, she used to program the San Francisco station. She calls me and she's like, hey, you should come by, say hi to Ghazi and stuff. He'd like to meet you just to say hi, you know, no big deal. So I go in there, and Ghazi and Empire offer me a substantial amount of money to help them with a couple of their acts for a couple of months as a consultant, which is a new field to me. I've never been a consultant before, and I plan on leaving all this. And the money that they offered me, and I went home and I told the wife, I'm like, listen, even if I sell cars or real estate, like this kind of money can't be made in this short amount of time with me not being away from you guys for 60 to 80 hours a week. Like, this is insane for me to turn this down. Yeah. Maybe I'll try this way and pick and choose the projects I work and who I work with so that I can keep myself more sane and do it my way as opposed to a big machine way. So I did that. And then a couple months later, a buddy of mine introduced me to a guy named Dooney. Dooney is, I don't know if you guys know who Dooney is, but Dooney ended up being a guy that had a company called The Lights Global, who their biggest act originally was Terrio, the fat kid that was doing dances on Instagram and stuff. Yeah. Got their money off that, and they became social influencer guys, and then they blew up this little guy named Lil Pump, who nobody under 19 had any clue who this kid was, and including myself. But if you put it on Twitter or Instagram, and these guys had figured out the algorithms at the time, you were like inundated the way BTS inundates the people now with batshit crazy kids all over the shit commenting on Lil Pump. And I'm like, who the fuck is this kid, right? So these guys are like, yeah, we wanna try and take this kid to radio. We've already got the SoundCloud success. And this is the beginning of SoundCloud really taking the lane of radio, because up until now, you couldn't be a star in 2017 unless radio played your record. Yeah. Spotify still wasn't as huge as it is. Apple wasn't as huge as it is. SoundCloud was nothing. It was brand new. But what was happening was there was an entire world developing under 18 years old of these kids that were having their own outlets and weren't even touching radio or TV. Didn't even know the core acts that the rest of the world knew, but they had their own stars. The Pop Smokes, the Triple X's, Extentacion, Tekashi, all these kids found stardom in the 19-year-old world before anybody in our age even knew about it. And the difference is, in our time, our parents knew about the shitty acts they didn't like. They just wouldn't let us listen to it because there was only so many places we could hear music, either on their radio, their TV, or their computer. Now what had happened is there was a divergence of listeners, and these listeners no longer needed their parents' car to listen to music. They're in the back seat streaming their own music on SoundCloud while their parents are listening to Rush Limbaugh, whatever the fuck they're listening to. So this all happened in 2007 was the year that everybody realized, oh shit, there's no more gatekeepers. This shit is rampant out there. Like everybody. And so I got on a bus with this kid, Lil Pump. It's me and a bunch of fucking 18 and 19-year-olds, right? For 2 weeks. Thankfully, I wasn't on Pump's bus. I was on the backup bus, the auxiliary bus where the crew was on. And it was insane to watch a kid have so many screaming fans. And he was, antisocial. He's not a social kid. He's a 17-year-old that's scared of the world, that's raised online. And in real life, he doesn't know how to talk to people. It's really crazy. So, but that was my introduction to where the music was going. And I had a hard time explaining to radio and to labels that, look, what you guys are doing is becoming the past. These kids are going to break without you. And you need to learn how to amplify what they're doing a different way. And it's not just airplay, it's appearances, it's pictures, it's content. And at this time, radio stations, iHeart was ahead of everybody else with setting up their own online content and stuff like that. The other stations had no clue what to even do with it. I had to teach radio stations like, hey, send your night guy down here with a camera. He's going to record it. Then he's going to post it. Then he's going to tag this guy, hashtag, tag, all that stuff. And then you can put it on these socials and then promote it on your station. And I literally helped a bunch of radio stations develop their own social platforms because they didn't even have the concept of that. Just imagine these guys have millions of people listening to them, and you go to their Instagrams and their Facebooks, they have 1,000, 2,000 followers. Like, how do you not have in the hundreds of thousands in a city like Los Angeles on your Instagram, or a city like Cleveland or whatever? So that was the beginning of that. And so with the success I found with Gucci Gang, which was the beginning of my realization that music has changed, and I call it punk rap. It's like punk rap, because when you go to these shows, I grew up watching punk rock because I grew up surfing and everything, and there was people mosh pitting and all that shit. Then I went to this show, and here's this kid rapping, and it looks exactly like a punk rock show. They're jumping off the rafters, they're mosh pitting, they're overdosing on pills, which is a punk rock show. Yeah. It's all punk rock. And the audience is all 13-year-old white kids. And then you realize that these kids are here because they don't have to pay anything more than attention, because they don't have to invest $17.99 in a CD to buy it. They just have to click. Oh, they don't like it, next, click. Oh, they don't like it, click, next. It's all they can afford to pay is attention. And their parents are bringing them down, dropping them off by the bandfuls. And by the end of the tour, we had parent lounges on this shit where the parents would be sipping Chardonnay because the venues figured out how to make some alcohol money, because all these kids were so young, the venues were losing out because there's no bar sales. Yeah. You walk up to the bar and get a drink in no time at every one of these shows. So it was the invent of a new era, like, and then 10K Records came along, and they're like, hey, can you help us with what you did over there? So we got this kid named Tekashi 6ix9ine and this other kid named Trippie Redd. Yeah. We have to develop a new style of working with these kids, because these kids don't work well with radio. They're not polished, they're not groomed, they're not gonna get on a mic and say, hey, everybody, go listen to my new album. They're gonna get on the mic and say, yo, suck my dick, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. And they do that. And it works. In today's world, it works. Yeah. The highest viewed video on Breakfast Club till today, I think, is still both times Tekashi 6ix9ine.
I mean, he's a character, right? He's a character.
He's a character. And you know, and to that point, like, you know, it's what our audiences have become. They like outrage, they like drama. It's got to be an episode. But also, I think it's dangerous, because we're asking people to become vested in these artists' lives. These artists had a hard time keeping up with the public when they didn't have to reply to Instagram and Twitter and always have cameras on them. It's going to lead to some really bad outcomes in the next 5 to 10 years when these people have zero privacy at all. I mean, you got Justin Bieber talking about people camping outside his house like it's a tourist museum. And, you know, and now these artists, you asking people to be so vested in you. What makes that hard is, like, for instance, the R. Kelly situation, the Bill Cosby situation, right? In the past, people could separate the art from the artist. Yeah. But in the last 20 years, we've asked people to go headfirst into the artist. Like, you got to believe in everything the artist believes in, otherwise you can't support him. Like, Kanye talked out against Biden, fuck him. We're all off Kanye now. Yeah. Despite all of his music and everything else, right? That's how they move. That's going to create a lot of extremism with these guys, and it's going to create almost to the level of I'm afraid of how much interaction artists are going to have to do. I think the only way the system is going to work is if you have groups like BTS, they're interchangeable, so that once one guy gets burnt out, you can plug another one in and keep it moving, because I don't know how long it's sustainable.
Yeah. Do you think that the fan to artist kind of engagement in this new generation is a different type of relationship than before? And like the follow-up to that is, do you think that the relationship that young kids are building with this new generation of artists over social media, do you think that their view of social media is the same as we, as I would say, like adults view social media, in terms of we kind of have it with an asterisk next to it?
So it's a good question. No, I don't. I definitely don't think the interaction is the same. It's become all-consuming, which is essentially what I'm saying. Like, I don't think the all-consuming can sustain, because these artists are still humans, and I don't blame these artists for losing their shit on listeners sometimes, because they wanted the fame, but they're still humans, and humans still need peace and comfort to be able to perform what they're doing. To your second point about whether I think things are gonna change, I think that they're going to change a lot more for the better as far as the fan experience, because they're going to look at social media as, here's the thing, man, social media for us was a pastime. It wasn't a livelihood. It's a livelihood now. It's so of course they look at it differently. I mean, one of the biggest revenue generators, especially in the pandemic, is OnlyFans. Every little girl thinks she's a porn star now. And to me, I think that's what's hurting the mentality. People are devaluing themselves and their own privacy and their own private time, and taking away. Eventually, they're going to lose sight of who they are. I mean, individuality is the pursuit of individuality has created so many like-minded group folks. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
So they all, and part of that is also because their access to each other, right? The reason we have such extremism going on is because in the past, extremists couldn't find each other very easily. They had to run in newsletters that were hidden from each other and everything. Now it's blatantly out in the open, and you can, and Facebook is actually saying, hey, you're extreme. Here's a guy that's even more extreme than you. Go follow him. You can be as extreme as him. That's not extreme enough. Go even extremer. And that's the, to me, one of the worst things that's happened in the last 10 years is the YouTube algorithms. Because if you don't turn off autoplay, if you went in to go research a Nazi or something like that, 20 videos later on autoplay, you are a fucking Nazi, because it's like they've gone deeper and deeper and found things to gauge your interest, and like, oh, this piqued his interest, let's fit him with this real quick. And it's just terrible. Yeah. People are not thinking anymore.
Yeah, and that's the other. That's actually what the way I look at it is, I think having the content out there is one thing, but the problem is that we're not training our young people to think critically, right? And actually value and evaluate that content. I mean, there still are, and I'm happy to see there are still kids in this generation that do that. But I think that it's not their fault, one. And then the second thing is, how do we reverse course? I think it's great to have all this content out there, but you have to be able to train your society to be able to evaluate that properly and not let that influence them. And
that came from having trusted sources, and with our administration doing the best they can currently to deviate away from what a trusted source is and having no trusted sources. The problem now is everybody has their own ecospheres of what they trust, and that's where the problem comes in, is that there's no bridging gap. There's always information out there, but there's nobody that's bridging the gap and saying, let me look at the information on the other side. So, when it comes back to the entertainment business, there is none of that, though. And entertainment business is purely bottom line. And what drives the bottom line is outrage, extremism, shit like that. So again, I'm going to come to a point I know personally where I'm going to have to assess what I feel about my life and my ethics. And one of the reasons actually why I joined Roc Nation is because they're not a typical label about bottom line, bottom dollar. It's been very refreshing to be somewhere where it's about the artistry and excellence, and not just how can we make the most amount of money the fastest off of this commodity. And the first time I was ever in a A&R meeting of sorts with Jay-Z, and he made it very clear that that's not what our goal is, and turned down a hit record because it wasn't the sound of the group that they were playing it. I mean, that speaks volumes when you come from a different mentality where it's always about how can we make the most. I worked a song called Crank That Soulja Boy that was terrible. I worked Chief Keef. That was terrible. I've been a part of quite a few careers that you could say have led to some bad decisions by people. If you say music actually is a influencer in life, then I've been part of. But on the flip side, I've worked Common, I've worked Kendrick, I've worked some guys that have done positive. So you get to a point, I'm 40 now, where you start thinking, do I want to continue to add positive to the world or negative to the world? And I'm thankful to be where, and not only are we active in music, Roc is very philanthropically active too. So it's very exciting, man. At least I'm at the right place in my time.
And I wanted to ask you about that, right? With Jay-Z, kind of what Roc Nation was, is they were an independent label, but he's kind of maneuvered his career as a businessman into a position where Roc Nation has got the same resources that they are a major label.
To your point, yeah, we're indie major. We're still an independent label. We're an independent label, but we're treated like a major because of the respect we demand out there. Absolutely. Bro, I'm telling you, the attention to detail is insane. Like, I get calls from Jay Brown because Rihanna's featured on someone else's record. And then he wants to make sure that they do a good job on that record because one of our clients is on that record. That's excellence right there. Like they have a way they expect things to be done, and it's not cutting corners. And I respect that, because in this business, it's easy to cut corners, and that leads to not longevity, and not cutting corners leads to a long lasting career, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you look at like in the past, in today's era, we've talked about all of these platforms that if you leverage moments of extremism, you can get these flash in the pan moments of getting a lot of eyes on an artist, right? If you were building a new act today, would you leverage any of these platforms in a different way where you could not only build some of this hype in specific moments, but would you be able to integrate them with an artist to create some longevity at the same time without sacrificing the benefits that can come from social media use?
So I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. That's not something I believe in. If those things are working on social media, by all means, do them. But don't just do them. Don't be vapid and just do that. And then the second you stop doing that, there's no substance left to you. So to your point, I don't think you should forego doing the challenges and the stupid shit on online that gets the attention. But I think you should definitely do much more work than just that. Don't be Boonk gang, that moron whose old fucking social media was just to do stupid shit and rob stores and act stupid and be tattered across his face. Like that's not a substantial career unless you're okay with making a flash in the pan money. And I mean, I'm not against that. Trust me. If that's what he does and it makes him money, by all means, take that money, invest it into something else that's more long lasting and sustainable. How long can you sustain being someone that breaks into stores, gets hit in the face, and does wacky, stupid shit before you get arrested, robbed, or killed?
Yeah. You know,
go ahead.
Just jump in. The way I've always thought about it is the Lil Pumps of the world. I've always thought they're great marketers, but who are the great artists? You know, and I'm not sure we've really seen a great hybrid of a marketer and an artist other than really like a Drake, who's maintained his excellence in this social media era, really leveraged meme culture, TikTok, all of that to maintain his kind of number one status. For an up and coming artist, how can they maintain their artistry, and what should they be thinking about? You talked about having something more than just the marketing skills. I think a lot of Gen Z is very, very good at this marketing side, but how can they get better at being an artist?
Yeah, because it can be confusing, right? For them, especially real artists, like they want to do what everyone else is doing, but they're feeling that terror with, I'm an artist, I want to stay true to my art, balancing that as well, just as to piggyback to your same part.
It's exactly that. It's be authentic to yourself. Do the other shit, but do it authentically and find more like-minded like yourself. Don't be afraid to spend on ads that target demos. Like that's an insanely helpful thing that people don't take advantage of. Just Instagram and Facebook can really help follow your growing. The same way they use those algorithms to find what might pique my interest in a video, they know how to find people that will pique their interest on your profile and your music, right? So keep building out, because if you get that viral moment and you haven't built out enough of a base that is like you or like-minded like you, then you're liable to lose your sight and move on to the wrong way. If you have enough of a base, it'll be a flash in the pan moment, like you said, and you can go on. I worked with Lil Nas X. I was the most excited guy about that record when they signed it at Columbia. The entire urban department thought I was batshit crazy, and they're like, what is this crap? And it's never gonna work. They were all over 45, 50 years old. I was the only guy under 40 when they signed that and worked it. And I had added on my own Spotify playlist for a month before they signed it, just because it had come up and the shit was catchy and my kids liked it. So you never know. But the problem with him was he didn't have any like-minded fans or any kind of base. So he's gone ghost. Like it became all about that country view. And then nobody knew what the rest of his music was like. The follow-up wasn't that hot. Didn't catch, and now he's just gone ghost. So it's you got to build up a base, or keep building it if that flash in the pan happens too early.
Yeah, that's a great point, by the way, on Lil Nas X. The follow-up didn't sound like the hit at all.
No,
very hard to maintain a brand when you
and the label was not happy about him coming out. They didn't want him to come out.
Yeah, it's historic too, right? It's not Lil Nas X is the latest example, but for every year you've been in the industry, there's been an artist who's had the #1 song, but couldn't do anything afterwards, right? It's like maintaining, and sometimes one hit is enough to sustain you for the rest of your life.
Well, it really is. If you want to tour in Europe and Asia, there are people still touring from 1980s single hit wonders.
Yes. But what becomes difficult is if you're an artist and you get that one hit and you're not able to continue to develop your art because
your first hit is the biggest hit ever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and you've worked with artists across the board, right? You've worked with the artists that have that kind of pop success. And then you have the artists who have the consistency. And I would argue that however you build your model, if you're a true artist, you have to focus on the artists and following the model of artists who built a model that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Right? Versus the marketing.
to give you an example of the other side of that, one of my actual, the artist I'm most proud of working with, because I did it all by myself and without a label and had a lot of success, was a guy named Afrobeat. We had a song called Joanna. It was actually called Drogba. And this song was huge in Africa and the UK in 2017, right? 2018 as well. Then they came to the States and it started popping off in New York, and these guys found their way to me and they're like, hey, we'd like you to work this song in America. And America was not ready. American urban radio doesn't play reggae very much or Afro-wave music. And at the same time, Davido had a record, who's a much bigger act. Davido was a billionaire from Nigeria with a huge act. I went out by myself and I got this record number 12, and it was because these guys had laid the foundation and worked. And a lot of people don't realize that the general audience, 95% of the world, is not looking for the hottest, newest music. That's not how music actually works. They want familiarity, they want comfort, they want to enjoy it. New music makes most people tune out. They actually, human nature doesn't like new and change. They like comfort and familiar. So this record just kept on generating more and more fans because it was already a year and a half old. It had permeated into so many places already that once we got it onto radio, it was like half the audience knew it, the other half lost their mind, like, oh shit, what is this? This is dope. Like, how did this get here? And I mean, it got to the point where even RCA was calling people angry that this independent artist, Afro-B, was getting much more looks than Davido. But it was because that record had already done its job. It had created such a large fan base, and it wasn't being forced on anyone by a label saying, you need to like this because we just put it out 3 months ago and you have to like it so we can make money. It was literally, this was the most organic record I've ever worked. Everywhere I got it played, it would come back top 10, top 5 Shazam, and I would go back and show the radio station, and it would eventually grow. And it was beautiful to see cause and effect and to see the actual growth of an act and breaking an act from beginning to end, using an older platform that people thought was not viable to break an act. The guy toured for an entire year in America off that. He's still touring in England, and they just put an Ozuna remix out that got over 500 million streams. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, one song. He's had a career for 3 years off one song, and that's because he developed the fan base off of it and did the right work. Kept building.
One thing I wanted to jump in and ask you about is being Persian, right? And now at Roc Nation, you've also gotten the opportunity to come full circle and work a little bit with Snow Allegra. I just want to hear your thoughts on that and your feeling like 17 years later.
That is awesome that you even put that together, bro, because that has been a real blessing. Like when they announced that we signed Snow, I was very excited because I have never had the chance to work with a Persian artist, and not especially someone of her caliber too. It's like she's immensely gracious and to be honest, her face did light up a little bit when we spoke Farsi to each other, and that's how Persians are. Like when we come across another Persian in public, especially in an unfamiliar setting, like if I run into a Persian in Beverly Hills and I'm like, okay, great, it's another fucking Persian. Like we're all over the place out here. But in the music business, where it's not very many Persians out here, and we can speak Farsi to each other in a room full of high-level executives and have no clue what the fuck we're saying, it's a great feeling. It feels very, very good that I'm finally in a position where I can help someone of my own background too. It really is. I mean, you touched it, bro. Like it means a lot to me to be able to work with Snow and to watch her success keep growing and growing. And she's an amazing artist.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
That's pretty cool, man. It's really nice to see that come full circle, and you are one of the trailblazers in the industry. That's
thank you.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of my close friends is an Indian guy too. By the way, he's a Brahmin. So hope the casts get along here. We're all good.
Oh, we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah.
So I know you're a busy guy. We kind of have to rearrange things with the time zones and everything, but wanted to ask you a couple questions before we get you out of here on unrelated fun stuff, just to get a gauge of like who inspires you, right? You've gotten a chance to work with a lot of artists. So the first question is, who are your top 5 personal artists that you feel like have had the most impact on you?
Oh man, I've got to be honest. One of my favorite artists I've ever worked with, despite his buffoonery, is definitely 50 Cent. He's one of the most charismatic, hardest working, intelligent, just human intelligence type people. He's a human intelligence guy and emotionally intelligent, and he knows how to work people. And it comes back to what I said, like the guy is a genius.
Yes.
Yeah. After that, I got to say Common was definitely one of my blessings to work with. He's so humble and down. I mean, The first time I did radio with a guy, he jumped in the car by himself. I'm waiting for his entourage to show up, and he's like, "Who are you waiting for? They want to talk to them too." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, let's go." Like, I respect this. I definitely respect Rico Love for his intelligence and his ability to express himself. Great guy to work with, very warm, very intelligent. It's hard to really give you a top 5. I mean, I enjoy Ray Shremmerd because of their energy and their enthusiasm and their humility and how fun they were to work with. Keisha Cole was a good person. I wouldn't say she was great to work with, but a great person to be around. You know, there were some I didn't care for too, but you know, those are probably my favorite ones to have been around.
Nice, and I'll let Partha ask you the second one. It's unrelated.
Awesome. And then your top 5 athletes.
Oh man, I'm a huge golfer, bro, and I understand. And if you guys understand golf at all, it's the one sport that all other athletes aspire to master too. So to me, it's the hardest sport. So to me, it's got to be Tiger, Jack Nicklaus, Sam Snead, who was a great golfer. I also think that Kobe Bryant was an amazing human being, an individual, and his ethic. I mean, his ethic is, they call it the Mamba mentality and whatnot, but essentially it's a way to encapsulate what we talked about and what I think set me ahead in this business is just focus and ability to finish and come through. And I mean, another great athlete, in my opinion, is Pele, because Pele did what he did at a time that he did it and the way he did it and with the energy and the long lasting in the whole world. Like, Pele was awesome. So yeah. I admire those that overcome adversity too. So, you know, that's also why Tiger is as amazing as he is.
Those are great lists, man. Those are great.
Really good picks, man.
Thank you so much for taking time. At another time, we'd definitely like to have you on again.
Absolutely.
When your time allows, these conversations are great.
Maybe you can get Mick on at the same time. He don't talk to me anymore. We can actually catch up on this podcast. You know, Mick is too big for everybody these days.
You got to email him.
I'm messing around, man. Hey, Mick Boogie. I'm sorry, DJ Mick.
I'll make sure he gets this message. Yeah, tell him that. Great having you. Hopefully you guys can connect, and let's circle back. Much love and continue winning and continue working hard and continue changing people's lives. Reza.
Thank you, brother. Much love, guys. Good to meet you, Partha.
Thanks, Reza.
Later, guys.